Cars, you've ridden in them, you bought one, you've seen movies of them, you even sold one at one point just to earn some extra cash here and there. It is something that we technically all have nowadays, but back in the 1890s, oh, that was like a foreign concept. You see, before the 1890s or in the 1880s, there wasn't something called a car back in the day, and most of the time they wanted to go from short distance travels like city to city or district to district, they would typically use a horse-drawn carriage. That was basically their taxi cab back in the day, and if they really wanted to do long distance travel, well, there was a locomotive train and the railway stations that usually were in those big cities at the time. But of course, we're talking about the first ever car invented here, and whoever would do such an audacious thing in the past, well, it actually wasn't Henry Ford, as some like to think that it was. Yeah, obviously in American history, Henry Ford is the guy that gave us Ford Motors and the inception of the American cars that we know and love, whether it's from Ford, Chevrolet, General Motors in general, Pontiac, Cadillac, all that kind of stuff. But Henry Ford was never really the first guy, despite what some say that he is. In actuality, the first ever guy, we have to kind of go all the way back to the Renaissance period because, yeah, Leonardo da Vinci kind of trumps everybody here in terms of timeline and when it comes to saying, oh, why don't we just make a car? Yeah, so before Henry Ford and basically everybody that we know within the car industry today, Leonardo da Vinci of the Renaissance period just decided to make a couple of designs and concept ideas of what happens if we can use a horseless drawn carriage using spring-based mechanisms. And I'm not even joking on that front. See, you have to remember, Da Vinci was kind of like an eccentric at the time, and he was basically so many other things, and he kind of felt like, hey, if we can make a contraption like this one, surely it would benefit society. But clearly it wasn't until the 1880s where, under the name of Carl Benz, who, for those car freaks out there, you know him to be the founder of Mercedes-Benz, he was the one that decided, well, if we can make a car or a horseless drawn carriage, why don't we just use petrol-based instead? But keep in mind that it wasn't easy for Carl Benz, as 1886 may have given him the first ever petrol-based vehicle. It's not something that's pretty impressive in terms of today's standards, if you know what I mean. Basically put it, the vehicle's design itself looks very wonky and clunky, but it is something that is suited for the time of the Industrial Revolution, and its horsepower was practically non-existent with a 0.75 horsepower, which is a minimum of a fraction compared to the 350 horsepower that we typically could get on a sport car like a Ferrari or even a McLaren. That's just sort of eyeballing it. I'm not a numbers guy here. I'm a historian, okay? But hey, if it wasn't for Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz to say, listen, if we can construct a petrol-based motor vehicle here, then we can push the way forward towards a new level of or mode of transportation. And thankfully, had it not been for him, then in 1896, Henry Ford wouldn't be involved, like we mentioned, with Ford Motors. General Motors wouldn't exist in 1902, and we wouldn't have the entire movie Ford versus Ferrari had it not been for Carl Benz back in Germany. Still, it is something that is pretty impressive to look back in hindsight at. Had it not been for that specific car, or had it not been for that specific person, then we clearly wouldn't have the mode of transportation that we know today, or at the very least, it probably would have taken us a very long time just to get there. See, the lesson that I'm trying to portray here for you guys isn't necessarily the fact that this was the first ever car created, but rather all it takes is one mind, one crazy idea, and one fabulous execution, all for it to make it a reality. And soon many people would follow thereafter if it becomes a success, because they see a formula imprinted, so why not try and do that and have a competition of sorts? But had it not been for Carl Benz in that first ever automobile, then clearly we wouldn't have been having the amazing set of cars that we know today, whether it's from Ferrari, from Ford, to Cadillac, Chevrolet, on and on we can go and talk about a list of cars. The point being that had it not been for Mercedes-Benz to basically step forward and say, alright, let's try something different and see if it actually could work, we practically wouldn't have the mode of transportation today, or at the very least, it probably would have taken us a very long time just to get there. And so with that, the lesson of today here isn't necessarily that, oh yeah, the first car was ever invented and it was this one, but rather that all it takes is one crazy idea, one crazy person, and one crazy execution for it to make a reality. And if you have some crazy ideas out there that you really want to throw to the table, whether it's from writing a book or making video content like here on YouTube, anything that you want to stand out and put your name in the history books, then go, by all means, go ahead and do it. Nothing's really stopping you, much like how Carlos Benz didn't stop him from making that first ever car and thus giving us the Ferraris that we all know and love today. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want any more other topics for me to discuss, well, do it all in the comments as well. I'd love to see what you guys have to offer there, and there's plenty of other ideas that I have thrown to the table, and hopefully you'll see down the line. But all it takes is one subscribe button to click and one like to follow and share. So see you all with that next one, and you know, there's a bunch of other cool stuff here for you to watch as well. So peace out.